Today I'm going to paint this picture in the style of Rachel Ruysch. Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here again. Today I'm painting in the style of somebody called Rachel Ruysch. I don't know if it's Ruysch or Rush, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I'm going to say Ruysch. And nobody has actually suggested that I paint in the style of this person, but I wanted to do it because I was searching through, I was surfing the internet, let's say, looking at artists that people suggested, and I came across this flower painter, I guess, and I was struck by the detail in the work to start with, and then I discovered that it was a woman. And I thought, well, that's odd, because I've always been under the impression that all the artists from the 1600s and pretty much through history really, have been male. And I thought it was a male-dominated domain where women weren't allowed to paint. So I did a bit of research on this person, and it turns out that she was a still life painter. She was born in 1664, so that was, to put it in perspective, 2 years before the Great Fire of London and the Great Plague. So way before the Impressionists, where I've done most of the other paintings in the style of. And in a time when I didn't think that women were allowed to have opinions, let alone paint. But then again, she was Dutch. She was a Dutch painter, and I guess they had a much more enlightened viewpoint than us Brits, let's say. So I was intrigued, and then so I did a bit more research, and I thought, okay, I'm really impressed. I didn't know that this lady existed, and she's done loads of work, so I thought I've got to do one in this style. So this is what I've attempted to do. So the photo I've got is actually the one that you can see on the screen now, is a composite of about 5 or 6 photos that I had. You saw the original photo at the beginning of the video, didn't have as many flowers in as that, and I roughly cut and paste more photos, and I used Affinity Photo to do that. And I didn't use all the fancy tools to make a really neat job. I just roughly trimmed around them and cut them out and put them where I wanted to go. And you'll see in the painting that I don't actually stick strictly to that. I move them around as well. And I made this single photo with the source painting of Rachel Ruysch at the bottom and my photo at the top to give me something to work to. And I painted this one in Procreate. And I started off I thought I want this grey background because I think that is what sort of sets them out from other paintings. So I did actually paint that sort of bungalow that you can see in the distance very roughly, but in a grey style. And then I roughed in all the colours, and I used for the grey I used the grunge brush to get the colour on very, very quick. And then for the initial painting, I think I went straight into, I started using the turpentine brush and the oil brush, and I thought, now I'm going to go for something a bit different. And I started with the gouache brush, and I did the first outline painting using that. So you can see now I've got the initial rough painting in, because I do like to sort of paint over the old painting. I'm not a person that does a little bit and work it up to a finished result. I like to sort of get a rough idea, because there's no sketching involved here, it's all painting. So I did this rough painting first of all, and then I start to work into that and then add detail, which is what you can see I'm doing here. Anyway, back to Rachel Ruysch. Rachel father was a professor of anatomy and botany, and he had a huge collection of animal skeletons and minerals and botany samples, I suppose. Well, I don't suppose he did have, according to records. And Rachel, at a very early age, was into getting out a sketchbook and getting all these skeletons out and pressed flowers, I guess, and things, and practice drawing them. And she obviously a very, very talented lady, and she picked up the skills of her father because I guess as a botanist, he would be used to sketching flowers, and she obviously inherited that skill from him. But as she became better and better and better, she actually, as she improved, taught her father how to paint and her sister as well. And when she was practicing, she also copied a painter called Otto Marcius van Schreik, who was a flower painter, and he also painted insects as well, from the Dutch Golden Age. And you can see that in her paintings, because not only does she paint flowers in some paintings, she does include insects in those as well. So she kind of started off copying her dad's examples, and I've got this picture of her sort of lying on the rug or the carpet with a sketchbook out and things scattered around and sketching those, and just sort of I suppose having a very privileged life, but so what? I don't think that's really relevant, but she obviously had this skill for drawing, and I've got this sort of image of her practicing and learning and loving all of that stuff. But at the age of 15, she was an apprentice to William van Alt. I think I've written down Alt. And he was a prominent flower painter in Amsterdam. And she studied with him for 4 years until he died. And I would imagine she would be mixing his pigments and things and doing all the things that apprentices do. I don't know if she would be stretching canvases and stuff like that. But I guess lots of menial things as well as painting. But he did teach her to arrange flowers as well as paint in a much more natural, three-dimensional way. And from that, she kind of invented her own style of flower painting. And by the age of 18, she was selling her own work independently, which I think's, not only for a woman to be doing, but for anybody at the age of 18 to be doing that is phenomenal. God, at the age of 18, I was, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I was sort of floating from job to job before. Well, actually, I'll tell you what I was doing. I was a guitarist in a pop band, I guess, and we used to tour the working men's clubs. They used to have working men's clubs back in the day, and we had a six-wheel transit van and a caravan that we used to tow around with us, and we'd park it in the club car parks and do the gig and move on. So that was a lot of fun, and I did have a great time, but I didn't really know, I didn't imagine that I would be doing that forever, or saw it as anything special. But and I hadn't really, although I was probably always been more into art than painting, the music, more into art than music. I didn't really have an idea of commitment, I suppose, and I wasn't committed to anything, whereas this lady clearly was. Anyway, I'm sort of rambling a bit. At the age of 28, she married a portrait painter, and I don't think that's relevant to the story because I'm talking about a woman in a man's world. But what is relevant is she had 10 children and still worked on commissions for an international circle of patrons. Now, I remember the birth of my first daughter, and for 2 years, my life stopped. It sort of went on hold when, I wasn't even the mum, I was just the dad. But I can't seem to stop doing everything, and this little girl took over my life. And it was actual fact, after her being 2 years old, that I thought, oh my God, I haven't done anything for 2 years. I need to get my life back. And then I signed on to a watercolour painting class, and that is what set off it was a night class, and that's what set off my career as a painter, an artist really. I hadn't done anything since I left school until then, and by that time I was 32, I think. So and this woman had 10 children, 10 to look after, not one, and she was still managing to paint and sell commissions to an international circle of people, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. Back to the painting. I did so you saw at the beginning of the video, I did a sample of colours, and I knew that although I would be sampling the colours from her painting, really I was looking at the background. I wanted to sort of get that colour right. And the leaves, I liked the approach that she'd got to the leaves in the painting and the foliage. And I thought I'm going to have to probably choose my own palette for the flowers, because obviously the flowers that I'm using are very different to the ones that she painted in her picture. So I tried to capture her colour palette for the leaves and the foliage, because I thought they made a superb backdrop to the actual vibrant colours of the flowers without sort of getting in the way and being too dominant. So that's what I'm doing here. You can see I'm working in the flowers, and I pretty much worked on one layer till I got onto I just said flowers, didn't I? I meant leaves. I'm working on the leaves. And I worked on one layer until I got to this stage. And then once I started to wanting to put shadows on them and sort of give them more depth, I created another layer, and I set the mode to multiply to put the shadows on. So wherever I'm painting shadows in this, I'm working on a separate layer, a multiply layer, and I've knocked the opacity down to about 50%, I would guess. And I kept merging the layers because this is a huge painting again. It's another 36 by 24 inch canvas, which in Procreate allows me to only work with 4 layers maximum. So I've got one layer for the grey background, which I lock straight away. And then after that, I've got the sort of the main painting layer, which every time I sort of create a third layer with the multiply on and blend colours or put shadows on the things, I then merge them down when I'm happy with it pretty much straight away, and then carry on painting. And then as soon as I want to put some more shadows on, I then create another layer, and I work like that continually. You can see now I'm working in sort of putting in the second layer of detail, sort of sharpening up the sort of roughed in flowers that I've got. And I'm not one for painting every petal in a flower. That would drive me absolutely crazy. So I'm sort of doing I pick out the main ones that I'm interested in, and then I kind of invent the others. And the more I work through the painting, the more creative I get at inventing petals and things. Because I have to say, after the first day of painting this, I realised what I'd bitten off, if you like, to paint. Because the first day I'd got the roughed in image done, and then the second day I started on the detail, and I had a lot of interruptions actually the second day, but I only had sort of 1.5 flowers with the detail done. And I thought, this is going to take 3 or 4 days. And in actual fact, to do the full piece, it took me 4 days, and it's thrown me right back on my schedules for videos. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to keep up to date, but this one, where I normally do a full painting video like this, and then 2 smaller videos of sketches and things, I haven't got around to doing the sketches at all. I just not had the time, because I've been working on this one because it was so detailed. And I guess there was a certain amount of boredom set in, because I not one for a lot of detail, and I like to keep things loose, but at the same time I was really excited and determined to finish it and keep that detail going across the whole of the painting. And I have to say, having done, this is the 6th painting now that I've done in the painting in the style of, going back to, I was looking through some of my own work, you know, sort of not in the style of work in my own right, and it made me realise how loose and sloppy I actually am. And I'm thinking, I quite like the fact that I've been much more disciplined and put a lot of detail in. Not as much as this one. This is like crazy detail for me. But in some of the others, I think it will not tighten up my painting style, because I'm always going to paint in a loose style. That's what I like doing. But I definitely think it will make me look a lot closer at things and put in a little bit more detail. But still, I mean, the detail I put in will still be loose, but I'll be more observant and looking at more detail. So I do think I'm getting a lot out of painting in the style. I have to say, it does take me a lot longer than painting my own stuff, because I'm obviously have to do the research on the artist, and then I'm constantly referring to the painting I'm trying to paint like, and then my source photos and stuff. And it is foreign to me. I'm sort of painting in a style that I've never done before, especially in this one. I'm not one for... I do every now and again I get a craving to do something that's more photo-like, I guess, or realistic. I'm not saying this is photographic or anything, but it is more realistic than what I normally try to do. Anyway, Rachel, she was actually achieved, I'm not sure if fame's the right word. She achieved international fame in her own lifetime during the Dutch Golden Age, which is incredible, really, I think, for a woman to do during that period. And at the age of 35, she was invited to join the Confrérie Pictura, an academic club of painters in The Hague, and she was the first female member to achieve that, which proves how well thought of she was. And then 2 years later, she became a member of the Hague Painters Guild. So obviously well respected amongst her peers and an incredible painter. And then she was invited to work for the court of Dusseldorf for Johann Wilhelm II. And she worked with doing commissions for him until he died. So I guess that was quite lucrative for her, and paid the bills, as it were. And art historians say even now that she was the most talented still life painter of both sexes, which I think it's cool that they've not sort of put her in a category of her own, but is saying she was the best still life painter. And she painted hundreds and hundreds of paintings from the age of 15 till the age of 83, which was 3 years before she died. And historians know that because she actually signed her age on every painting she did from 15 to 83, which I think's quite a cool thing to do. I guess it's not something I've ever done. I don't even like putting the date. I used to date paintings, and then I discovered that if you don't sell them, you get stuck with them because people look at the date and think, "Oh, that's 5 years old. Why has he not sold that?" So I don't date them now. Anyway, let's get back to the painting. You can see on the leaves that there's lots of shadows on there, which I think gives it a lot of depth. And that is what I was talking about when I was creating the multiply layer to put them on. It just meant that I could paint them on freely, not affect the colour underneath, and in the actual fact keep the detail. So if you look at sort of the leaf that's sort of lower centre of the painting, you can still see all the veins in the leaf, but they're slightly darker colour than that's in the light. So I found that a really nice, quick way of sort of adding the shadow. And I suppose it's exactly the same as using a really thin glaze when you're painting with real paint, I guess. I kind of, you can't see the source photo on this because this is one of the bits of the painting. I had a lot of trouble again with the iPad not recording the screen, so you've not got the split screen going off here, but the colours on the flowers in the actual photo, I wouldn't say are 100%, here we go, 100% reproduced in my painting. So I've tried to get this sort of, you can see in that pink flower, I've got this sort of grey pinks with the sort of petals that are behind the more dominant petals, because looking at the source photo of the Rachel Ruysch painting, she does sort of have petals that are quite grey in places, and almost you can't see them. They're not that far different colour to the actual background. So I wanted to sort of try that if I could. I don't think I was subtle enough. I think that my colours were much more vibrant, I think, than the painting that I'm trying to emulate. But I do later on put a glaze over pretty much 3/4 of the painting to try and knock back some of that vibrant colour and get it closer to what I was trying to achieve in the copy. At this point, I'd kind of stopped looking at the source photo and also, both source photos, the photograph of the flowers and the photograph of the painting that I was copying, I felt confident enough that I'd done so many petals that I was making it up, especially on these flowers, because the photograph didn't have a very good image of them anyway. So I was making up my own flowers and inventing the leaves and so on. And I was quite happy to do that. So my painting did speed up at this stage, and I was producing it a lot faster. So I think if I was to paint this again, I probably would do it quicker than the first time round. You can see now I'm adding more shadows, or I was just then, and now sort of going in and sharpening things up. I can honestly say I could have spent another day on this, going over it again, putting even more detail into it. But I have to say, time beat me. I thought I've spent enough on this really. I'd spent sort of 4 days on it. Not full 4 days, because I kept getting interruptions and things, and people visiting, people popping my ass all the time for a cup of tea and a chat. And, which is cool. It's nice. So quite happy for that. But it does sort of stop you being a bit productive. So here we go. You can see now I'm putting this glaze, sort of knocking back some of those colours. And I do think it lifts it and adds a certain something to it. And that is it. That is my painting in the style of Rachel Ruysch. Let me know what you think to it. If you think I've managed to achieve it. If you've got any other artists you'd like me to paint, please list them below. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a big thumbs up. It's always appreciated. It helps me out a lot. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and clicking on that notification icon. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.